What if Jacaerys and Helaena were wed? Could it be a peace strong enough to stop the dance? Or would it have made things worse? Let's take a look. It was the 120th year after conquest, and King's Landing smelled of smoke, tallow, and secrets. In the Red Keep, where candlelight clung to tapestries and marble floors, mirrored faces thinner than honesty, whispers traveled faster than ravens. Everyone knew the king was failing. King Viserys, known for being indulgent, kind, and a man who loved warmth and his toy city of Valyria, like a middle-aged man and his Game of Thrones inspired Lego set, had become a husk of disease, wandering rooms within the castle. He coughed blood into linen. He shivered in sunlight. He peered at tiny bridges as if peace were a thing he could place with two trembling fingers. Two women lived at the edges of his hope. Queen Alicent Hightower, dutiful and steel-spined, moved like a prayer with a plan behind it. Princess Rhaenyra, his named heir, wore resolve like armor and made promises to rooms full of men who preferred that their promises came with beards. Between these two, the wife and the daughter, stood the children who would shape the realm. Aegon, wine-breathed and hungry for importance. Aemond, as honed as a sword, finally satisfied with its edge. Helaena, gentle and strange, who spoke in quiet songs and riddles. And Rhaenyra's sons, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey Velaryon, by name and rumor, strong by bone. Before we get too far, hit the like button and subscribe for me. Thank you for all your support. Now let's jump back into this story. In the history that the singers keep, Alicent wed Helaena to her brother Aegon, binding the green circle tight. When Viserys died, they crowned Aegon fast and loud. The sky learned the sound of dragons tearing each other's shadows to pieces. But some histories are only a sentence away from a different ending. And we are here, my friends, to rewrite that very one. Viserys called them to court on a winter-bright morning. The great hall hung with red and black, and the Iron Throne glared like a cliff of iron thorns. Rhaenyra approached and knelt. Jacaerys stood behind her, chin high, hands tight. Across the sea of courtiers, Alicent stood with her sons. Aegon tasting the word crown behind his teeth. Aemond's single bright eye colder than ambition. Helaena kept a little apart, fingers worrying embroidery, as if feeling for a seam the world had hidden.
Father,
Rhaenyra said, steady and bright.
Jacaerys is of age. Let him be wed to Helaena, fire to fire, blood to blood. Let us be one house.
Helaena is promised.
Alicent answered, voice neat as a cut.
To her brother.
Promised is not wed.
Rhaenyra replied, never taking her eyes from the king. Viserys coughed until the throne seemed to shake. He raised a hand. The crown slid a finger's breadth. He did not fix it.
I will decide,
he rasped. He lifted his gaze to Helaena.
Child, do you understand what is asked?
Helena's head tipped.
2 branches, if apart, will be broken by the wind. But if they grow together, the wind has to work harder to damage them.
Her eyes found Jace for a heartbeat.
He is kind. Kindness outlives sharpness.
So it shall be. Helaena will wed Jacaerys Velaryon.
Sound arrived before comprehension. Gasps fluttered. Rhaenyra's shoulders eased. Aegon spun and left in a boil of pride. Otto Hightower didn't move, but something behind his eyes rearranged itself. Alicent's fingers dug crescents into her palm and let go. Jace stood very straight, so his heart would have somewhere to pound. The feast made a brave show of unity. Spiced boar, lemoned fish, honey breads dusted like first snow. Minstrels sang songs that didn't know whether to praise or mourn. Jace and Helaena sat side by side, their hands bound by silk, firelight finding silver in their hair.
My lady,
Jace said softly.
There's music even when no one plays.
Helaena replied, feeding a rescued beetle a crumb of cake. Then, remembering courtesy,
Thank you
for what?
for talking to me like I'm here.
I'll always do that.
he said. and meant it. Meaning can grow into habit if watered. Later, behind a closed door, Alicent told Otto,
We had the thread, now it sows their banner.
It is the king's will.
Otto answered, which is what a man says when his plans must dress like virtue.
And wills can be guided.
He let the last words sit on the table like a tool neither of them picked up yet. The news ran outward like dye through linen. Driftmark lit lanterns along the piers. Lord Corlys thumped his cane and called the match a braided rope. In the Riverlands, hesitation leaned Rhaenyra's way. In Storm's End, Boros Baratheon responded to the announcement.
A man likes a wind that doesn't change.
At Winterfell, young Cragen Stark read the Raven's message twice and told his maester,
If the trunk holds, the branch is no threat.
The wedding came in the September beneath candles that turned the air warm and gold. The Septon tied their hands. Jace said the words until they felt like his. Helaena said them like a spell against loss. Afterwards, they learned each other's ordinary. She circled rooms, 3 quiet laps, before sitting, as if mapping the invisible. He frowned deeper, the more a page revealed itself. He held still for a moth on his knuckle. She listened to Harbour's stories, as if boats could teach you about people. When she closed her eyes and doors opened behind them, he held her hand and didn't ask for a key. They flew together. Dreamfire rose, blue-white in her belly, and remembered joy. Vermac sprang up with a young dragon's pride. Over the city, the bay lay like molten tin.
Look,
Helaena said, pointing at 2 ship shadows overlapping. The seam was darker than either shadow alone.
Together lasts longer.
Then we'll hold together,
Jace told her, and the dragon's answering cries wrote it into the morning. But the greens did not become grass. Aegon drank more and smiled less. Aemon trained until his arms trembled, then ignored trembling. Alicent prayed so hard her lips went bloodless. Otto wrote and received letters that said loyalty wasn't what it used to be. Viserys dwindled, and Helaena sat at his feet and sang small songs that put a thimble of air between him and pain. When he died, the city felt the absence before the bells said the word. Doors closed. Others opened. The Green Council gathered behind wood thick enough to keep vows from leaking.
Just crown Aegon quickly,
Criston urged.
Crown him properly,
Otto countered. Dignity is a weapon if you know how to brandish it.
Mother,
Aegon said.
shall I keep kneeling to your prayers, or shall I stand?
You will be king.
Alicent told him, and had to believe the word would turn a boy into a man. At Dragonstone, the Raven arrived. Rhaenyra stood at the head of the table. Daemon lounged like a threat that had just recently learned manners. Jace spoke with a steadiness that surprised older men.
We hold our course. We win with patience, move with speed where speed profits.
Helena's whisper brushed his ear.
The river meets the sea. From above it looks swallowed. Underneath it keeps going.
He understood enough. Dragonstone woke. Ravens cut the air. Ships were loaded. Harness buckles clinked like careful bells. In the pits, oil smoothed old leather into now. Vermax and Dreamfire took the sky often because the sight of 2 dragons moving as one is a sermon. In the capital, Aegon wore the crown badly enough to convince himself it was heavy in all the right ways. Cheering had hollows in it. Vagar's shadow crossed the city like an old scar. Sunfire gilded terraces and preened. Aemond felt certainty like flint in his bones. Aegon stroked gold, as if he had earned it. Skirmishes lit and died along the crownlands like sparks. A mill fed 2 banners in 2 weeks and called it prudence. At Rook's Rest, dragons faced each other in an uneasy circle and went home without sending anything to the ground, but fear.
Dreams are for dreamers.
Helaena, later, tracing a beetle's shell with her thumb, replied to no one in particular.
So is waking.
Jace's fear came in 2 flavors, sharp and dull. On sharp nights, he walked the walls until the sea pressed his ears and left salt there. On dull mornings, letters turned into little boats on a page river. Helaena taught him to listen for the world under the world.
Roots.
she said, pressing his palm to her breastbone.
Leaves fly, roots hold, bending hurts, bending saves.
He nodded and tried to make the habit before he needed it. The armies gathered near Tumbleton when gathering could no longer be avoided. Banners rose like a fever. Morning broke like a plate. Bright, sudden, dangerous at the edges. Jace rode the line and said the things commanders say. Helaena stood with Dreamfire, hair torn by the wind, a tiny charm, blue beetle shell, tucked into Jace's glove for finding his way home.
For courage,
he teased.
For choosing,
she said, kissing his knuckles through leather. Vermax leapt. Dreamfire thundered. From the south, Sunfire burned a path into the day. From higher still, Vhagar fell into the moment, like history insisting on herself. Aegon rode gold. Aemond sat the old queen like a judgment.
Yield,
Jace called, because some words you must spend, even if you won't get change. Aegon's answer was flame. The sky became collision and tear, claws on scale, wing cloth ripped like silk with a hot wire, screams that bent the air. On the ground, men rediscovered smallness. A standard wavered fell, rose in another hand. A knight in green hauled a black squire from under a shattered cart because the boy's voice found the place where men are most human. The knight died moments later by a stray arrow. The squire lived to tell a son that enemies are sometimes men you haven't met yet. Sunfire slashed Vermax's foreleg. Rubies of blood fell burning. Jace tasted iron and held the seat by instinct. Dreamfire hit Sunfire hard from the side, blue-white flame washing gold, and even Vhagar blinked. Aegon slipped and clung for life, was suddenly only a boy above a very long fall. Jace saw him as brother, not claim.
yield,
He cried again. Pride reared. Aegon dragged Sunfire into a climb meant for a better wing. Aemond dove Vhagar to end every option at once. Helena's voice, roots, bend, found Jace at the hinge of the second. He wrenched Vermax out of a killing cone. Heat kissed hair and leather. Dreamfire rolled under Vhagar and came up at Sunfire with a roar that sounded like sorrow for the things dragons do, because riders ask. When the noise found its edges again, Sunfire listed a wing, ragged. Aegon dangled, held by strap and will, and the illusion that will can be a strap. Jace slid close, reached, because sometimes a man does the thing no song bothers to imagine, and grabbed leather. For a heartbeat, they were two boys on a narrow bridge. Aemond refused. Vhagar plunged. Jace let go. Martyrdom saves fewer lives than it promises. Dreamfire shouldered the old queen's fury aside, and the sky screamed. Sunfire fell lame to earth. Aegon crumpled beside the ruin of his dragon's wing. Vhagar rose, furious and winded. Vermax bled steady, alive. Dreamfire panted like a bellows. The field broke. Not because one side had worse men, but because seeing a king in the mud turns courage into arithmetic. Jace landed near enough to risk and ran.
bring a litter,
He ordered, and the world obeyed. Aegon's eyes fluttered.
Thief,
He croaked.
pretender.
Brother, you lost.
Not to you, Jace.
Aegon muttered and drifted. Helaena came through, smoke with tears, clean paths, on a soot-streaked face. She knelt, touched Aegon's cheek.
Rest.
She told him. And he did. In King's Landing, Alicent pressed both palms to a table and shut her eyes. Otto watched a slow loss arrange itself. Criston Cole took off his helm and looked at his hands until he saw they were just hands. Aemond did not return. He and Vhagar made fires wherever maps offered lessons. Blame gathered as if it had been waiting. The realm did not become gentle, it became possible. Oaths were gathered. Heads fell where rot had set too deep. Pardons were given where bruises could still heal. Rhaenyra was crowned as the old king had meant. Dragonstone first, then King's Landing, where cheers sounded real, if cautious. Jace stood at her right hand. The city breathed like a man who'd held his breath too long. Helaena walked the Red Keep like a woman returning to a house where the doors had been moved. In the dragon pit, she laid a hand on Dreamfire's neck and listened to a sound only two beings in the city could hear. At night, she traced circles on Jace's chest and asked quiet, large questions.
Do you like being king's blood?
I like being alive.
He said. She hummed.
Yeah, that helps. I guess it's better than hating it.
Their child came red-faced and furious at breathing, then solemn, as if listening for a god. Rhaenyra wept, like someone finally allowed to set a weight down. Alicent visited because patterns outlast grievances, and looked at the boy until a tight thing in her face loosened without permission.
This boy will mend things we've long ignored.
Helaena said softly, not touching him, as if prophecy could be smudged.
If the cloth doesn't tear before he learns to sew.
What tears it?
Alicent asked, mother beneath all her other roles.
The winter that is yet to come, and songs men don't know how to sing.
Little omens crept in like cats. Fishermen swore the morning tide sat lower than memory. The ravens got fat in the warmth and turned thin as the leaves began to fall. A man found ice in an oak hollow after a warm night. Maesters wrote neatly and dismissed rumors with no proof. Helaena pressed fingertips to her temples and sometimes laughed at a joke no one else heard. Jace took her to the wall at sunset.
Close your eyes. Tell me what you hear.
Waves. Gulls. A market boy who should be in bed.
Deeper.
She whispered. He tried. He heard stone, remembering it had been fire. He heard Helaena breathe.
You're kinder than the world asked.
She said.
Keep it. It will be needed.
By whom?
Everyone.
Winter slid down the map like a stain. Cloaks came out early and stayed. A raven from the wall arrived with ink blots where a firm hand had shaken. Lights in the far north, moving like a story told with hands. They grow in number. Then they disappear in the winter. A shadow like a man made of knives seen from the corner of the eye. The word white was used because words are habits.
We must send more than grain,
Jace said. Helaena agreed without a word released. That night, wind from the sea walked into the city uninvited, ran invisible fingers over iron blades, leaned a nursery candle's flame toward a sleeping child, roused Dreamfire with a low rumble. Helaena woke to wings. Not dragon wings, but black wings with a message. The same type of message she claims to hear, but no one else can see. It stood pecking at the window while the room waited in silence. She laid her palm on the stone. Below, the city thrummed. Beneath that, a note like touched glass. She read the note, not with her eyes, but with her soul.
Roots,
she said into the dark, and curled under Jace's arm, listening to the beats between the world's breaths. Morning turned, listening into action. The men who know snow like scripture were given the lead. Grain, steel, and warm words were sent north. Rhaenyra signed orders that reminded the Night's Watch it hadn't been forgotten. The court learned to eat simpler when it needed to. And the realm learned to write to places it once preferred to ignore. Jace gathered his council.
We cannot fight emptiness with pride. We fight it with hands.
He sent ravens to lords who hated each other in better weather.
Bring your steel and your disbelief. We have space for both. Bring your oaths if you like. Bring your hands if you don't.
Lords arrived with banners kept polite, and tempers kept under their cloaks. The Red Keep's great hall saw faces that hadn't looked at one another without a blade between them in a generation. Jace stood where the light fell evenly.
I do not ask you to love one another. I ask you to believe me when I say the cold doesn't care which banner you wear.
The first to laugh, short and rueful, was Boros Baratheon.
A storm knows no sigil,
he granted. Lord Tully nodded as if water had made the speech for him. Jacaerys Velaryon tapped his cane.
Ships see what land forgets,
he added. A few men muttered about tales to frighten children. A few of those men later asked what they should pack for a journey they'd rather not take. At Dragonstone, Helaena spent long hours with maps turned upside down.
Sometimes things make more sense when their names can't find them,
she explained to a baffled steward. She set small stones where the wall was not.
Rivers forget nothing,
she told Jace at dusk,
But they won't drown you for stepping in. They drown you for thinking you are not in them.
Aegon learned to walk without looking at the floor as if it might reach up. He learned to speak without tasting metal. In the gardens, he found a kind of quiet he'd never let himself have. He did not forgive. Forgiveness requires agreeing the world happened one way. He preferred the version where he'd been robbed. Sometimes, when he looked at Jace, he saw his own face too clearly to see a brother's. Aemond returned with courtesy, neatly folded over something worse. He bowed to Helaena. His eye flicked to her little son, and his mouth twitched, as if surprised to find itself still attached. Then he practiced with silent, efficient rage, as if effort guaranteed fate. Rhaenyra ruled as Viserys had intended. She led her councils where disagreement wasn't considered treason. Punishments quick enough to instruct, but not so quick that they turned into the drop of a heavy sword. She laughed sometimes. That laughter was both policy and miracle. The first northern reports came not from maesters, but from men who didn't write unless they had to. Hunters who knew when a silence meant meat wasn't there, and when it meant something else had asked it not to be. Rangers who measured days in tracks and nights in the shape of a flame said tracks were missing where they should be, and fires burned oddly, as if the night were listening. One letter apologized for poetry. Jace kept it anyway. He sent envoys who wore black cloaks without oaths and learned which villages had memory enough to tell the truth. He ordered beacon hills prepared with pitch and dry brush.
Light them only if what you see makes you forget why you shouldn't,
he told the wardens. Helaena spent an hour in the throne room alone. She laid her ear to the seam where the doors met.
It's quieter when no one sits,
she told the captain on duty. He nodded like a man who wanted to argue and didn't have a place to put the argument. On a brittle blue morning, a scout from the Gift stumbled into the Red Keep with mud frozen up his boots and a face starved of conclusion.
"Be on my wall, my lord,"
he said hoarsely.
"The dead walk."
The hall did what halls do when asked to believe the oldest true thing. It went very quiet.
How many?
"Enough to be remembered,"
the man said, and sobbed once, as if his throat had remembered something his mind couldn't bear.
We write the song we don't know,
Jace said afterward to Helaena, and meant, we must make a language for this, or it will surely unmake us. He sent north not champions, but carpenters, miners, masons, men who would know what it takes to make a line hold. He sent dragon glass, because old stories had the shape of tools in them. He sent ravens with more careful words. If you think this is beneath you, bow lower. The ground is rising. Dreamfire flew higher, longer. Vermax matched her. The sight of two dragons circling as a promise steadied men more than edicts could. When they landed in the dusk, soot flecked Helena's cheek like ash-blown freckles. Jace wiped one away with his thumb. Aegon watched them from a window. He pretended he hadn't chosen. Some days he wanted to hate. Some days he wanted to be relieved. Most days, both wore the same face. The beacons did not go up that winter. The wall held, not with ease, but with the competence of men who had been remembered. The North learned to count dragon glass like grain. The realm learned to measure kings by how much ice they believed in. Tumbleton's aftermath rippled less cruelly through this new world. Criston Cole, spent and quiet, made himself useful in ways that did not begin with killing. Otto Hightower discovered the inventory of his influence was smaller than the record books had promised and retired into a piety that occasionally told the truth. Alicent visited Helaena more often than pride would prefer, and less often than love wanted, and held her grandson with a care that said, "A rope can mend if you set the fray down long enough." Jace presided over trials and harvest levies, over shipwright funds and border disputes, over the little wars that fit inside rooms. He learned names and the price of a good hinge. He learned how to sleep badly and wake kinder. He spoke often of patience, as if it were a forge, and the men who disliked him for it still found themselves standing closer to fires. Years did not pass gently just because a war had ended early. They passed as years do, with middles, good harvests and bad, marriages and funerals, a riot in the fish market put down with more water than iron because somebody thought to bring water, an attempt at a poisoning that failed because a hinge stuck, this once in a useful way. And then a winter night came late and hard across the narrow sea, and the wind that found the Red Keep had been sharpened on something older than stone. When dawn came, it brought ravens with plain words, storms seen walking in the distance, men lost without a trace on patrol routes, older than memory, a glow on the horizon, not a fire. Jace convened a smaller council, people who built, people who planned, people who did not fold when the table leaned.
We send more. We go ourselves when needed.
Rhaenyra looked at her son and saw Viserys' wish, finally given horse, cloak and road.
Go, bring back what we need to believe.
He rode north as far as White Harbor that spring, and the air tasted clean in a way southern lungs forget. He spoke with men who did not know how to pretend poorly. He saw fisher boats left untied, as if haste had made rope an insult. When he returned, thinner and straighter, his first stop was the dragon pit. Vermax snorted, nudged. Dreamfire lowered her old head until Helena's brow met cool scale.
We will need them all.
Helaena said, and meant dragons, men, patience, songs, roots. In the seasons that followed, the dance became a word boys learned in the same breath as the lesson, how it almost was, and how it didn't have to be again. Bards sang a different end at Tumbleton, and though they embroidered, as bards must, the shape held true. Two dragons flying together, a king laid down, not butchered, a brother helped, and then let go, at the only moment help would have killed them both. Aegon aged into a man the city didn't stare at. He laced his boots himself. He stopped telling certain lies to himself and told better ones to others, which is a kind of wisdom. When he met Jace's eye across a hall, sometimes he nodded and sometimes he didn't. That was the rhythm the years could afford. Alicent learned that a mother's prayers change with the verbs her children use. Aemond learned some silences make you taller and some make you thin. And as for Helaena, she learned to carry prophecy as if it were a sleeping child, showing her dissension from Daenys. Her riddles stayed strange, but fewer men mocked them. Too many of them had seen the way the world sometimes listens when a certain voice speaks. They stood, listening to the world breathe, city above, stone below, the long cold humming in a key that had yet to find its words. And somewhere, far off, a future walking toward them at the exact pace a story chooses when it wants to be believed. If you want to call it peace, call it the kind dragons and men can share. Not quiet, but possible. A crown tried to be a promise. A family tried to be a house. And in the spaces where older songs had ended in fire, new verses made room for roots. Not the world saved, perhaps. The world kept. That, too, is worthy of a song. You've made it this far. Do me a favor and like and subscribe, and check out more from our channel by clicking on this video or this playlist.